this is a great case to help you predict what would happen in a divorce case that involved adultery in Texas. What will a judge do to you if your case involves adultery? And the reason why this is such a good way to help you predict that is because it's a recent, on-point, specific example of what one judge did with facts that are something that are fairly common. And so we'll go through that. In this case, wife filed for the divorce because of adultery. She didn't have to list the grounds for filing the divorce. She didn't have to say anything. She could have just filed in her petition that she was filing for the divorce because of insupportability. But wife filed for the divorce. She listed in her petition because of adultery. Wife was a prison guard working for the federal government, and husband was a border patrol agent. The parties were both ultimately awarded, when they went and did the divorce trial, they were awarded joint conservatorship of the children. Joint, a lot of people in Texas think that that means shared 50-50 custody. Actually, it just means both people get to be in the lives of the children. So they were both awarded joint custody of the children. And so the wife was given the primary designation. She was given the exclusive right to decide on the primary residence. So again, this is the case that anybody can look up freely, and I just put notes here to help us go through what happened in this case that involved adultery, recent Texas case, divorce case. Wife was awarded the exclusive right to decide on the primary residence, which generally means the kids are going to live with the wife the majority of the time. But she was also given a geographic restriction, which means that even though she accused him of adultery, she was ordered that she had to stay in El Paso for purposes of raising the children. Okay, so husband had to pay $2,110 in child support, and wife was given the right to temporarily live in their marital home. She was allowed to stay there with the kids until a date certain when husband would have to basically take over the house. He was allowed to keep the house, but he had to refinance it in his name so that she would not remain on the note. And he had to give her $65,000 judgment for her portion of the equity in the home. Okay, wife was given, I'm just going to cross these off so we can feel like we got things done. Okay, wife was given all property in her control, and so that's very normal. We see the courts awarding that wife is going to get all property in her control, and husband's going to get all property, all the household furniture and all that in their personal control. They get to keep that. This is where it gets interesting, though, as far as the adultery goes. Wife was given 55% of appellant's retirement accounts and 60% of his thrift savings, which is another retirement account. So usually, the vast majority of the time in Texas in a divorce, you're going to see 50% of each other's retirement. Wife gets 50% of husband's retirement. Husband gets 50% of wife's retirement that was earned during the marriage. But they deviated from that and awarded wife 55% of this one and 60% of this one. So that we can see was a disproportionate share. That's a big win in a Texas divorce, even though it's like, well, that's only 10%. Somebody might look at that and think the judge didn't really care about the adultery. This is definitely a sign that the judge did care about it. Okay, so wife was given 60% of the other retirement. Now, wife was also awarded possession of the son's investment account, which can be important because if it's a 529 account or otherwise, that can be a good thing to have control over as part of your portfolio, even though it's for son. So the person that wins that also has a win. Wife was awarded that. Husband got to keep his own Roth IRA and some other accounts, various accounts that he had. We don't know exactly from reading this case what amount was in those accounts. Husband was also awarded, again, even though he was accused of adultery in the divorce, and you could see later that the court probably believed that evidence. Husband was awarded 4 vehicles that they must have had in the marriage and a toy collection, which we don't really know what that was. Okay. Now, after the trial, husband immediately tried to ask the court to change its order. So after the trial, where all of that was awarded that I just said, the court tried to change the order right away. They asked the court to reconsider. It's called a motion to reconsider. He tried to basically appeal to the trial court and try to get it to change its mind, but the trial court said, no, we got the right outcome for you. And so then he had to appeal it to a higher court. All this cost husband a lot of money and wife a lot of money because she has to defend it with an appellate lawyer. Husband appealed on the basis that he felt the court should not have found that he committed adultery. So you can see here in the case, he's complaining in the papers that the court found he committed adultery. He says there was not enough evidence to find that he had committed adultery. So he also felt that he should have been able to get standard custody. And that's one of the really important things in this case is that husband was given the joint right to be involved in the children's lives, but he was only given Saturday night to Sunday night, 3 weekends per month, as opposed to a standard possession order where he would have more time with the kids. So very interestingly, the parties came into this case agreeing that husband would have a standard possession order. They agreed to it, and the court itself, the judge busted that deal and said, no, you're going to get less time with the kids. So that happened in this Texas adultery case in 2020. So they're talking about what husband wrote in his papers, and he's complaining that the judge found that he had committed adultery, saying that you didn't have proof that I committed adultery, saying that basically she was using hearsay. She was using hearsay statements to prove that I committed adultery, and that wasn't a fair basis for proving that. It was just rumors, and they should not have been allowed to be used as evidence. So the husband said, because you found that, you should take that back and instead divide our retirement accounts equally. And we do see the retirement accounts being a big basis of fighting in cases, especially involving adultery, where one person is trying to get more of the retirement account. So the court said, and the wife replied in her papers to husband. So when you're doing an appeal, husband files a brief with the court, and then wife files a brief. And wife said, no, I did have more than hearsay to prove that you had an affair, husband. I found text messages from your lovers. I got pictures and reports regarding adultery from a private investigator. And our kids have been meeting your girlfriends during our separation, which is also circumstantial evidence, wife argued, that you had girlfriends before. So that's the evidence that she used. Text messages that she received from his lovers, that she got a private investigator, and that immediately upon separation, husband was dating other women. So one thing that the court does is it cites the law here. So this is the exact case that could be cited in any argument in any court in Texas, that a trial court can grant a divorce in favor of one spouse if the other spouse committed adultery. And then they cited this case, which anybody can look up. Okay? And actually, I'm not sure, with it being a Westlaw case, it might not be online, but we can try. In any event, that's the case that they cited. So the court said we can grant a divorce in favor of this, and then we see that the court is now doing its analysis. So in any time there's an appeal, the court will have a section called analysis where it looks at all the arguments of both parties and says, okay, what do we think about what you just argued to us in your brief? And the court said it defined adultery as voluntary sexual intercourse of a married person with one not the spouse, and that is how the case had defined adultery. And then importantly, it's said here that adultery can be proven directly, for instance, with a video. That's direct evidence, or it can be proven with actions during the separation. That is very significant. Actions during the separation can be used to prove that you committed adultery when you weren't separated as circumstantial evidence. So a lot of people file divorce and immediately act like they are divorced because they're separated. You aren't divorced until you're divorced, and the court will hold your behaviors during that separation time against you as evidence that you may have committed adultery. So that, to me, is very significant. Okay. Now, the court really had this amazing point as well, which is that appellant offered no denial when his wife texted him and said, "I'm sick of your affairs." He replied with, "I love you, let's go to counseling." He didn't reply, I never had an affair. What are you talking about?" He didn't rebut what she said in the text. And you might think, because we have we have a very deeply embedded idea that silence can't be used against us because of the Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, but that's not how it works in family law. They say here, it's well established under Texas law that silence, where a denial would be expected, can serve as proof against that person. So when somebody accuses you of an affair, you definitely need to make sure to rebut that. So he goes on to talk about the fact that this was totally unfair regarding his children, that even his wife said that he would be allowed to get standard custody, and issues involving custody, possession, and access to the children are reviewed on an abuse of discretion. So the court starts talking about what you look at when you're deciding on custody: the desires of the child, the emotional and physical needs of the child now and in the future, the emotional, physical danger of the child now and in the future, the parent's abilities, the programs there to assist, the plans for the child of the parent, the stability of the home, and the acts or omissions of the parent, excuses of the parent for acting as they did. So they didn't award dad even a standard custody arrangement, but then we get on down further to see that wife has complained about significant things on the stand during the case. She said that husband had spanked his children and had berated them before. That husband, this is really important, husband requested full custody in the case. Full custody in the case. You're asking for full custody. You're asking the court to take the children entirely away from one parent when you're asking for full custody. That can really hurt your credibility. If you're a parent that's willing to hurt your kids and basically not ever see their other parent, then maybe you're not a parent that's good enough to be getting even a standard possession order, which is what the judge decided here. Asking for full custody should be done very carefully with a lot of support. So he also said on the stand, he said to the judge, "Well, I need full custody so she can deal with all the stress that she has at work and maybe, perhaps catch up on her finances." So the court caught wind of the fact that he was trying to punish her and get these kids away from her, and with that sarcastic testimony, and they punished him in the outcome for it. So ultimately, the Court of Appeals listened to the entire thing and said, "Too bad, you lose the appeal. The exact division that the trial court ordered is going to stand. We affirm the judgment of the trial court." So all that money on attorneys was wasted. And that's one example of an adultery case in Texas and how it can land if there is adultery and you can prove it, but also the husband is, or the wife, whoever's committed adultery, they have to have facts as well that are supporting, evidence that is supporting what happened, because without any evidence, just saying this person committed adultery, the court will do very little with that. Thank you so much for stopping by the Partis Friends Company. I hope this has helped guide you and be able to envision a divorce case involving adultery in Texas.